Hi, Phanessa here. In this video, I am going to demonstrate how to knit this super chunky and cozy cardigan. So for the materials, I used this here. This is super bulky from Hobby Yarns. I used 4 different colors for this cardigan. You'll need a long circular needle. This one is 40 inches. I think that's good enough for all the sizes. It's a US 19, 15 millimeters. Okay, so I will also be using a US 17, 12 millimeters. That's going to be used for the hem, so the back hem and the front hem. So for the cuffs, I'm going to use a US 15, 10 millimeter, and this is a 16-inch circular needle. You can use double pointed needles or the magic loop, but I do want the cuff to be a lot smaller than the sleeve. The sleeves are used with a 15 millimeter, so I want to go down to 10 millimeters because there is no shaping for the sleeves. You'll need some stitch markers and your tapestry needle. I have several different ones. This is good for larger weight yarn, and this is also good for larger weight yarn, or you can just get a large eye one like this. And then you'll need a stitch holder. There's different kinds of stitch holders, or you can just use scrap yarn because you will need to hold your stitches when you start working on the front panels. All right, let's get started. So I'm just going to work a little sample for the beginning, and then we will move forward with the pattern. So for the hem, I'm going to use a smaller needle size. This is US 17. That's 12 millimeters. So I used a gray marble color, and I'm just doing a sample here. Okay, so this is my tail. And if you don't know how much of a tail you need, just wrap your yarn around your needles. Let's say you need to cast on 20. You'll wrap it 20 times. And then, I didn't count that, I'm just showing you an example. And then holding on to that spot, pull off, and then that will be how much you need. So I'm just going to cast on a few stitches. Start with a slip knot. Okay, so you're going to place your forefinger and thumb through the two, between the two strands here, and then pull back like a slingshot, so the rest of your fingers can hold on to the tails. And then you're going to come under the thumb, this strand here, over this strand here, and then you want to come back through this same space. So pull it through and drop, and then gently tighten. You don't want it too tight, so otherwise you can't work into it. Again, this way, and then over here, and then back. Okay, I'll leave links for the long tail cast on, but for now I'm just going to cast on a few stitches just so I can show you how to start off this pattern. So I'm going to work 10 total rows of 1 by 1 ribbing, so it's going to be knit 1, purl 1. Okay, so I'm going to knit the first stitch, and then I'm going to purl the next. Okay, yarn in the back, knit, yarn in the front, and purl. So the cast on row is going to count as 1 row. So I need to work 9 more rows. Okay, when you get to the end, just turn and then repeat. Yarn in the front, purl, yarn in the back, knit, yarn in the front, purl, yarn in the back, knit. last stitch is a purl stitch. Okay, so you're just going to repeat that. I'm going to work 10 rounds for the size medium. Just follow the pattern for the number of rows that you need for your hem, and it really is just a matter of how long you want the hem to be. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Let's see, I'll show you how you're supposed to count your rows. So this one here, that was your cast on row, so I count that as row 1, 2, here's your third row, and then the last row is on your needles. So I have 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4. So then I would need to knit 6 more rows to get 10 rows. Okay, but I'm going to switch colors here. Let's pretend I have 10 rows. For the main body, I'm going to switch on over to the 15 millimeters. I'm going to switch on to the blue, and we're starting on the back piece, which is the biggest piece. You can tie a slip knot for this. I don't usually do that. I'm just going to place the loop onto my needle and then knit the first stitch. And I like to tie a couple of knots back here. Cut off my gray color, and then I'm going to knit across. So we're going to work stockinette for the main portion. So on the wrong side of the stockinette, you're just going to purl. Okay, so purl all your stitches. And then you just repeat those 2 rows. So you just want to work stockinette stitches for the total number of rows that you need for your pattern. I worked 22 rows of this color and then I switched. So just follow the pattern and you can play with the different colors. Okay, so just repeat those 2 rows. It's basically just a stockinette stitch. So I started with the blue and I worked 22 rows. So I thought that was a good enough length. And in the pattern, it'll tell you how many rows you need for each size, but really it's just how long you want it. So for the next color, I did the same thing, 22 rows. But then when I got to the pink, I realized that it was going to be way too long. So I worked 10 of the pink and 10 of the gray. Now I'm ready to start one of the front panels. So you'll need scrap yarn or just something to hold the stitches while you work on the right side. Okay, so I have 50 stitches. I'm going to knit 21. So there's 21 on each side. And then there's going to be 8 in the center. So I forgot to place the markers, but go ahead and place your markers to block out those front, right, and left, and then the center for your neck. I'm going to knit across 21, and then I'm going to place my neck stitches on hold, and then I'll work on the left front. I want to reserve the center 5 stitches on the inside for a garter stitch band. So I'm going to knit across my 21 stitches, and when we start the wrong side, I'll place a marker after 5 stitches to reserve it. On the side, I don't care so much because I'm going to sew that to this piece right here. For the right front, you're working it on the inside of your panel. So that's 21 stitches. So this is what a stitch holder looks like. I'm just going to place these stitches on the stitch holder and then I'll use the scrap yarn. Why? Just, I don't know, to show you what your options are basically. Okay. Make sure you use a contrasting color. Okay. This is just the blue. Oh my god, I stabbed myself right here with this really sharp scissor the other day. I'm sure you've been there. So you can grab a tapestry needle. Okay, so now I'm just going to place the rest of these stitches onto a scrap yarn so that I can come back later and finish this side. Okay, then you just tie a knot. So this one probably would have held all of my stitches. I also bought these not long ago. I haven't tried it. So before you move on, make sure that you have the right number of stitches blocked off. You don't want your front panels to be uneven. So make sure that you have same number of stitches blocked for the right and the left panel, front panels. The neck part, if you're following the pattern and somehow you're off a couple of stitches, don't worry too much about it. The important thing is that your front, left, and right stitches are the same number of stitches. Okay, wow, I like that better. So there's a hole here. I'm just going to poke it right through, make sure I don't poke my finger. And that is it. I like it. Okay, so now we're on the wrong side. So I originally had a different design, but later changed to the garter stitch here. So the first 5 stitches will be reserved for the garter stitch. So this is going to be the wrong side starting at row 2. So for the first 5 stitches on the wrong side, I'm just going to knit. Again, you can place a marker to mark the 5 stitches. So there's 2, 4, 5. And since I'm on the wrong side, I'm just going to continue purling the remaining stitches. Okay, so the only difference is you are knitting the first 5 stitches on the wrong side. The right side is still going to be all knit stitches. And you don't have to do the garter stitches. You can just leave it all knit stitches. It'll have a curl to it, but you may like that too. Personal preference, I guess. So for the right side, again, you're just going to knit across, and then the wrong side, the first 5 stitches is knit and then purl remaining stitches. So you just repeat rows 1 and 2 until you have to switch colors. Since there's 10 rows on this side, you want to make sure there's 10 rows on that side. So what I'm going to do is mark the very first or the very last stitch, so the 10th stitch from here. So this is the 10th stitch here. So far I've worked 2 rows. I want to make sure I work 8 more so that I have 10 rows, and then I'm going to switch colors. It's going to be 10 pink rows. Okay, so that's 10, 10. There's 22 here, 22 here, and then so just make sure you follow the same color pattern for whatever it is that you're changing to. Okay, so you're going to repeat those 2 rows until you have 10 rows of this color here. Okay, so I've got my 10 rows. I've cut this off, leave a tail so you could weave that in. Next color. So this is how I change colors. It's really up to you. Leave a tail and then just pull this through. And then what I do is tie the 2 ends together right here. I'm just going to knit all the way across. So for the first 5 stitches on the wrong side, I'm just going to knit. So there's 2, 4, 5. And since I'm on the wrong side, I'm just going to continue purling the remaining stitches. Okay, so there is the start of my pink, and then my garter stitches are there. That's on the inside of the front panel. So this is the neck here. The outside is just, I leave it as is. Okay, so you're going to repeat those 2 rows until you have the same number of rows for this color that you do on the other side. For me, that was 10 rows. Okay, so just make sure that you have the same number of rows as you do the back side. Okay, so that's 10, 10. There's 22 here, 22 here, and then we'll switch to the smaller needles to work the ribbing. I am ready to work the ribbing. I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to continue the garter stitch when I do the ribbing. If you're starting on the wrong side, just go ahead and purl 1 row. I am starting on the right side because I have the right number of rows. I happen to end after completing a wrong side, so I'm on the right side. So I'm going to knit 1 row of stockinette with the new color with the new size, so the smaller size needle. If you're on the wrong side, and if you choose to continue the garter stitch, you don't have to. Just remember that you'll need to knit the first 5 stitches or whatever, however many you have, and then you can purl across. And then I'm going to knit across. Remember, if you're working the wrong side, if that's where you're starting your ribbing, you need to knit the first 5 stitches to stay in the garter pattern, so the edge here. If not, then you'll just purl all stitches. Okay, now I'm going to start the ribbing. So I'm going to knit 1, purl 1 across after I work these 5 here. Okay, remember, I'm continuing my garter stitch. If you're not, don't worry about it, just knit 1, purl 1 all the way across. But I am knitting 5 for my garter stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5. You can place a marker. Okay. I'm going to start with a purl because these are knit stitches. So I'm going to purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. Okay, you're just repeating that across. You may end with a knit or purl depending on the number of stitches you have. Okay, so I ended with a knit stitch. I'm going to want to purl that stitch when I turn my work. So purl the purl stitches, knit the knit stitches. So this is a purl stitch. I'm going to purl this stitch. This is a knit. When I get to the marker, I'm going to knit the remaining stitches for the garter stitch pattern. Okay, here's my marker. I'm going to knit the last 5 stitches. Okay, so repeat those 2 rows until you have the correct number of rows. So for me, that was 10 rows of ribbing. So that was my 3rd row because I'm still counting the very first row of just stockinette. Okay, there's 1, 2, and 3. So again, this is my garter stitches. So knit my first 5. Again, you don't have to follow the garter stitches. You can just make it all ribbing. So now I want to purl the purl stitches and knit the knit stitches. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that for a total of 10 rows of this color here. Okay, so I've completed my 10 rows, which matches the ribbing on the back side. So I've got 10 rows here and 10 rows there. Okay, so now I'm going to bind off. The first thing you want to do is knit 2 stitches. And then you're going to grab the first one and pass it over the one you just knitted. And then drop it. Now you repeat, knit 1, pick up this one, and pass it over and drop it. Knit 1, pick up this one, pass and drop. Okay. course, you can always do this with a crochet hook, which I prefer. You'll just insert it the same way like you would your needle. Yarn over, pull it through, and then pull through the loop on your hook. Insert, yarn over, pull through, and then you can drop that and pull through on your hook. You can do that in one sweeping motion. And I recommend using the same hook size. I'm just doing this loosely because I don't have a 12mm that I can find. Okay, so leave a tail so you could weave in your ends.
Okay, so yarn over and pull all the way through.
Okay, so let's place these back on the needle. These were the stitches that we held while we worked on one panel. So just be careful not to twist your stitches. Okay, so I still need to keep this color, and there's 10 rows here, so I want to work 10 rows. I've placed all of my stitches back on my needle. So to avoid a gap here, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow this yarn here and see how it connects. So that would have been the very next stitch that we included on this side. I'm going to place that on my needle, and then I'm going to knit these two together. Okay, so that pulls them together a little bit. I'm going to knit the next stitch and then grab this one and pull it over. So that's going to be loose. You want to make sure you tighten that up a little bit. That's the tail. And then we're just going to bind off. Okay. You'd knit and then slip that one over and drop it. So this isn't going to fit through here. I'll just mark this stitch here. This is the last. This is the one I don't want to work into. So these are my 8 stitches. And when you weave this in, you can close that even further. This is the last stitch here. So now I'm going to place this last stitch on this needle. So I'm going to knit those two together, and then I'll get back to 21 stitches, which is even with the other side. Just want to make sure that's tight.
For row 1, I'm going to knit across. Place a marker after the 5th stitch.
So this time I want my garter stitches in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to mark off this stitch here so that I don't go past that stitch on the wrong side. Okay, so just like on the wrong side over here, the 5 stitches we blocked off are going to be knit stitches and not purl. So I'm going to purl across to the last 5 stitches. I'll use that since I can see it. Okay, so now I have 5 stitches left. I'm going to knit these 5 stitches. So this section here will be my garter stitches. Okay, right side, I'm going to knit all my stitches. And then I'm going to repeat that until I have a total of 20 rows for this color, 10 on each side, the back and the front, just like I did over here. So I'm going to grab a marker and mark the 10th stitch like I did here. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that for this side, what I did here, and then we will work on the sleeves.
Okay, now we're ready to sew up the side. So let's work on the side seam. I've done that for this side already. I used a mattress stitch, which is an invisible seam. So right here, it looks pretty good. You can't tell. All the stitches align. And on the inside, there is a bit of a bulk. I'm using this large tapestry needle. It has a large eye, which will make it easy for me to see my stitches. Okay, so let's seam up the other side. This is my front, so this is left front. And then here is the back piece here. I'm going to be working on the right side. So to work the mattress stitch, you need to have the right side facing you. So let's turn this around. So mark where you want to stop. I'm going to stop right here at the end of this gold color. If you're not following the pattern, then just measure from the top down and mark where you want to stop. Make sure that it's the same for both sides. Okay, so lay both sides down and we're going to start at the bottom here. I am going to be using a contrasting color in this tutorial just so that you can see the yarn and the stitches and where I'm inserting them more clearly. You're not really going to see the color just because of the nature of the mattress stitch. So I measured out twice the length that I need. It was actually too long, but I guess that's better than not having enough. Okay, so this is the color I'm using. I'm using it so that you can see better. So you can start in any corner. I'm going to start on this side here. So if you take a look here, there is a space between the very edge and the last row that we've worked. So this is the last row here. We worked down. Remember, we went from the shoulder to the hem. So here's the corner. I'm going to insert from the bottom up. And then I'm going to pull this. Make sure you don't pull it all the way through. Go to the other side and insert it from the bottom as well. So right into the corner stitch. Now back on this side, we're going to go in the same space that the yarn is coming out of. And then you want to go up. And then you're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. So into the same space and then up one row. Right here, this is the yarn. You want to follow that back into the same space and then go up one row. Come back to this side and then again look for where the yarn is coming out of. So right here, there's the yarn. It's coming out of this space here. I'm going to insert my needle and then up one row. So I'm going to repeat that back and forth, and then every so often you want to pull tight. Okay, so this is the space that this yarn is coming out of. I'm going to go up one row here and back to this side, right into the same space that this one's coming out of, and then up one row. So each time you go up, you're just going up the one strand. There are a few spots where the strands are really close together. Just make sure that you just go up one strand. So I'm going to repeat this back and forth. All right, let's pull this. I'm going to hold on to the tail and the top, and let's watch how satisfying this is. Okay, so tug tight, and you can't even see the contrasting color. Okay, so I'm going to repeat this back and forth up into my underarm. Now this is the back. So I liked that I have my color block, because if I'm off when I get to where the color changes, then I can make sure that I pull back a couple of stitches and align the different colors so that they match up. Okay, so when you're getting ready to pull it tight, hold on to the base right here and pull, because you don't want to, if you keep pulling, you're going to pull that through. So make sure you hold on to the base when you're pulling. So this looks good. I'm just going to continue on. So I'm at the underarm here, so I'm going through here, and then I'm pretty much almost done. That's my last one. And so you just want to tug it, make sure it's secure. So make sure you secure the tail here at the end, and then I'm just going to attach new yarn to the other side of it. Okay, so now we are ready for the sleeves. So we're going to pick up stitches around the armhole. If you don't already have your yarn, go ahead and grab the color that you want to start with. I'm just going to attach the gold to my tail here. Okay, so we're going to pick up right here, and we're picking up 3 stitches for every 4 rows because they're not the same height. So the rule of thumb is pick up 3 stitches for every 4 rows. So I'm going to start here at the underarm. So right here is my first hole or space that I want to pick up the stitch. So just pull up a loop. Now in between, there's a small space right there. I'm going to pick up another loop. And then this next one here. And then this 4th one is the small one. I'm going to skip this one and go into the very next one. Now the very next one is small right here. It's kind of tiny, don't miss it. I'm going to pull up a loop from there, and then another one from here, and this one here I'm going to skip because it's the 4th row. So I have 10 pink rows and 10 gray rows on each side, so that's 40 rows, and we're working in multiples of 4 stitches. That's 10, and we're only picking up 3 stitches for every 4 rows, so that's 30 stitches. So I should end up with approximately 30 stitches around my armhole. Just make sure that you have the same number of stitches for both sides. Okay, so place a marker to mark the beginning of the round. Okay, so now I'm going to start knitting in the round just in stockinette stitches. So you're going to knit every stitch all the way around. And for the number of rounds, I'm just going to mirror the body. So I'm going to work 22 rounds of this gold color. And because I've been using a long cable, I'm going to need to work the magic loop in order to work in the round for the sleeves. I'll leave a link for a video tutorial on the magic loop if you're interested. And you can also use double pointed needles, but you do need the larger size. If you wanted to work back and forth instead of in the round, you can work back and forth, just knit the right side and purl the wrong side, so the inside will be purl. And then you can seam the underside where the underarm is using the mattress stitch like you did with the side seam, and that'll work as well. Okay, so now I am ready to switch colors. I've worked 22 rounds of this yellow gold color. Now I'm going to switch to the blue. For the blue, I'm only going to work 13 rounds before I start working on the cuffs. So because the blue color is next right here on my body, I'm going to switch on to the blue. But it'll be too long if I follow the number of rounds or rows. So I'm just going to work 13. Okay, so here is the other side. That's 13 rounds. And then I'm going to switch needle size and work a 1x1 rib for 4 rounds. Okay, so let's add the new color. Okay, so I'm going to place my marker and then knit the first stitch, place my new color, And then I'm going to tie a couple of knots just so I know it's secure. So when you change colors, you usually end up with a jog where you see an obvious color change at the beginning of the round, since working in the round is sort of working in a spiral. So after you knit one round, I'll show you what to do to avoid the jog. So on my other sleeve, I forgot to do that. So you can see the obvious jump here where the color changes. I'll show you what you can do to avoid that. Okay, again, you're going to knit the first round like you normally would. And I'm almost done with the first round here. This is my last stitch. I'm going to move my marker, and then you're going to grab the left leg of the stitch right below, place it on your needle, and then you'll knit those two together. So knit those two stitches together. What that does is it pulls it up so that it aligns the colors a little bit better. Okay, so I'm at the end of round 2. I'm just going to continue, and I decided to work 13 rounds of this blue color, and then we'll switch needles and work on the cuffs. Okay, so for the cuffs, you want to make sure that you switch to the US 15 10 millimeter. In this section here, I actually forgot, so I'm still using the larger needle size. I did fix it later, but I didn't record that. Okay, so back to the cuffs. Now, if you happen to have an odd number of stitches, just go ahead and knit 2 together for the first stitch. Okay, so knit 2 stitches together, and then you'll have an even number of stitches for your 1x1 ribbing. So you want to purl the next stitch, and then knit the next. Purl the next, and then you just keep repeating your 1x1 rib all the way around. So just follow the pattern for the size that you're making. The only reason why I brought up the odd number of stitches is if you were adjusting and you happen to pick up an odd number of stitches on your sleeves. Okay, I'm at the end of my first round. Now I'm just going to repeat that last round for a total of 4 rounds, or as many rounds as you'd like, and then we'll cast off. Okay, I've worked 4 rounds. I'm ready to bind off. I have this hook here. I'm going to show you how to use the hook to cast off as well. Okay, so you're going to knit 2, and then grab this first stitch that you knitted and pass it over the last stitch that you knitted. And then you're going to repeat, knit 1, and then pass the second stitch over. Knit 1 and pass the second stitch over. So you're going to repeat that around until you have 1 loop left on your needle. Okay, so let's cast off using a hook. So this one is about the same size. You can use a smaller one if you don't have a large one. Just make sure that you're casting off loosely. Okay, so just like your needle, insert it through the stitch right through the front as if to knit, yarn over, pull through, and then through the loop on your hook. Insert your hook into the next one, yarn over, pull through and through. Okay, you can also do one sweeping motion, yarn over, and then pull through both loops at the same time. Okay, this is the last stitch. I'm going to now fasten off. I'm going to have to insert a different video for closing up in the round after you cast off. It's the same thing, just a different pattern.
And then I'm going to pull this out. So we've got our tail coming out of this loop here, this loop. So we want to find the first loop over here, which is this stitch here. You can see that half and this half. So right through the top here is the first stitch. So you want to insert from the front to the back, Gently pull, and then we're going to go back into this loop where this one came out of. What that does is mimic the stitches that you have all around. Okay.
Okay, so I'm over here at my neck stitches. There's some gaps here where the neck meets the shoulder. I want to try and close that up a little bit. I'm going to follow the stitches here. See, it goes around. So just follow that stitch and then pull through, and then it comes down here. So I'm going to go through these 2 loops, and then I'm going to pull that through, and then through here on this side, that's the other side of the gap, and pull that, and then I'm going to tighten this space here, and then that loop right there, I'm going to follow it just like the duplicate stitch. Just follow that stitch. Okay, then I'm going this way, and it looks so much better already, so right there. Okay, so I'm going to now secure it on the wrong side and just weave in my remaining ends. So the other side was okay, so I'm just going to leave that as is. Okay, now you just have all the other ends to weave in.
Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button. You'll be notified every time I post a video. I'll see you next time.